All I have to say in conclusion is if you go look at the video from Actman and you go look at the likes and dislikes, well, it seems like most people agree with him. And you know, it appears to be that most of the people that are upset about this are just speds screaming into the fucking void. I hoped that someone with a room temperature IQ would at least be able to understand that, but I guess I was fucking wrong. Make sure y'all prepare yourselves for the absolute mental midgetry about to take place here. Bro, you sound about as intelligent as Kamala Harris right now whenever she tries to make a speech. You knuckle-dragging retard. Holy shit, your intelligence level is fucking mind-blowing. What kind of knuckle-dragging retard actually asks that question? Dude, were you fucking dropped on your head as a child? Where did he state that he believes Halo is not an arena shooter?
Anyone who's played Quake or Doom will tell you, fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
How the fuck are you going to try and harp on me for a quote lack of research when you're making dumbass comments like fucking this? Well, there was way more than enough to make an entire video on this.
Alright, what's up y'all? Hope we're having a great day today, and oh my, we have some response-ception to delve into today. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, today's video, I'm going to be responding to another video by a commentary channel named Krilix, in which he is responding to Nier's livestream, which was responding to another one of his videos, which was responding to Thunderstruck's video, which was originally responding to the Actman's video, about the rise and fall of arena shooters. Now, if that all sounds stupid and confusing, well, that's because it is. But nevertheless, here we all are, with both Nier and myself deciding unanimously that we would cover Krilix's recent video due to just how bad it really is. I will say there are some very, very few moments that are few and far between, I will add, where I somewhat agree with him, or at least understand what he was trying to say. But other than those tiny instances, the rest of his video is spent just strawmanning Nier, while also missing the point entirely, cutting Nier off to make a backhanded remark or response without acknowledging the full statement, or just arguing in bad faith in regards to the Actman. Because yes, this motherfucker literally admitted to not even watching the Actman's original video on this entire topic, before diving into shit talk Thunderstruck's response. And let me just say that after watching his video on Thunderstruck, that this second one responding to Nier fully met my expectations, and not in a good way. Now, I will say if you want full context on all of this situation, I would recommend that you go and watch both of Thunderstruck 115's videos, Krilix's, and Nier's livestream, albeit that is a lengthy amount of stuff to catch up on, but keeping in mind that this is a response-ception video, I'll do my best wherever I can to add or clarify context as needed. Lastly, I just want to add that I have absolutely no idea how long this video is going to be, although it's definitely going to be on the longer side for sure. Seeing as his response to Nier is 36 minutes long, so it all depends on just how much I need to break down and what context I need to keep or add in myself. I'll do my best to save on time by cutting down to just the major points of contention, but again, there's a lot we have to get into and dissect here, so bear with me y'all. But with all of that being said and out of the way, it's about time we dive into this response, so get comfortable y'all, grab a drink if you need it, preferably a stiff one, and let's dive straight into this.
Hello everyone, how's it going? I hope y'all are doing well. Now this isn't gonna be some stupid apology video, as I frankly don't have anything to apologize for.
What's this, you fucking piece of shit? What's this?
Bro, I can sense your ego from here, like, goddamn. What an amazing way to start a video, let alone one where you're addressing criticisms towards yourself, claiming you have nothing to apologize for before we even get started or address anything. It just comes off as pretentious and facetious. Which ironically enough, as we get further into addressing the actual video, there are quite a few times where you should be holding your L or apologizing, but I'm just getting ahead of myself now.
Now, in case you were unaware, this is a follow-up video from my previous video I made on Thunderstruck 115's response to the Actman. Now, as it turns out, there were quite a few individuals that were displeased, so to speak, with the way I responded to his video.
Yeah, because you ended up barely addressing Thunderstruck's points, would cut off sections of his video before he finished his points to make him look bad, while ultimately just coming off as an insufferable douche. Especially by starting almost every statement with, "Hey listen, dumbass," or something along those lines. That may sound rich from me, given my older content, but ever since my Mayo videos, I've reassessed how I handle insults and edgy humor. So a word of advice, Krilix, if most of your responses can be summed up like that, you either have nothing important to say, or are just looking to talk shit, or seriously need to dial back the vulgarity and make more concise statements. It's one thing to do every now and again throughout your video, but otherwise, you should definitely reassess how you handle giving criticism.
Now this is going to be a response to someone by the name of Brother Nier 2.0 in his live stream. Now there are others that made responses, but frankly, I can't be bothered to make more than one of these videos.
I mean, it really didn't take you long to backpedal on that statement after seeing Thunderstruck had made a response to your original video, huh? I also find it incredibly rich that this was your excuse for not responding to or addressing anyone else's criticisms, when apparently that doesn't actually seem to be an issue. So why not properly respond to all the major points of contention that everyone had with you in this video instead? Was that not an option, or did you pull a Stark and just jump in to argue in bad faith and shit talk the entire time? Seems a bit disingenuous to me, dude, that's all I'm saying.
Now before I start, there are a few things, very minor things that I got wrong, such as Nintendo 64 having a Wolfenstein release, but those things are so minor that there's no real reason for me to include them into this video.
That seems to be like a bit more than a minor thing. I was originally just gonna cut this part until my friend Michael brought up how that's more retarded than I realized, because you're literally claiming a game that never existed was made, so maybe you should address more of those quote-unquote minor discrepancies.
Back to the original point. I guarantee you, if I go ask any of my family members that play video games that are older than me and that don't play video games religiously, they can't tell me what an arena shooter is. Of course, if I go ask my friends that play said game,
That's an anecdotal statement. Entirely anecdotal. That does not mean the genre is irrelevant. That was Thunderstruck's point.
alright, what would you like me to do then? Would you like me to go into the street and interview random people on what they think an arena shooter is? You know, how about you actually step outside and go ask normal people? Not your friends that stay on YouTube all day. Just go ask normal people. Normal people. Because personally, I'm not going to put in the effort to go interview 50 random people off the street to see if they can identify what an arena shooter is.
Okay, first of all, who the fuck is asking you to do any of that? Secondly, what the hell do you consider a normal person? Someone that isn't on YouTube? Because your definition isn't clear at all. Just because you think they're, quote, normal people does not make it any less of an anecdotal example to your point. Now, I must ask, are you entirely incapable of doing your own research at all? I don't mean screaming into the streets at some old fuck as a source, but instead actually looking it up? A fucking graph or something even? I mean, here, I'll do one for you. If this genre is so unrecognizable, then how come new releases within it have been steadily inclining since the early to mid 2010s? Keep in mind, I'm not talking player counts here, just recognition. But hey, research is hard, I guess, huh?
But most normal people cannot define an arena shooter. And that's because they're so irrelevant nowadays, with the exception of Doom. Hell, even you yourself when it comes to the single...
Are we gonna ignore Quake now?
When the newest Quake entry can't even get 1,000 players, yeah, Quake multiplayer is irrelevant right now.
Are we gonna ignore Quake? Are we gonna ignore Unreal Tournament? Because those are pretty popular. Are they alive? I don't know, I don't play them.
My guy, if you don't even know if they're alive or dead or not, why the fuck are you even bringing them up? My point is that they're dead. The game's dead. It's pretty fucking irrelevant.
Alright, this is where the bullshit meter ticks up another notch and the straw manning really begins. You were not talking about player counts whatsoever. The context of this discussion was, and is, the genre's recognition, and Nier was pointing to examples outside of Doom like Quake and Unreal that are still recognizable games within the genre. I mean, we can sit here all day and argue over the player counts of X game, but if you're really going to deny that games like Quake and Unreal are recognizable titles within the genre with weight behind their names, you are fucking lying in some way or another, either to yourself or your audience.
That's the thing though, most people do not follow gaming closely. They play the few games they
Source?
You know, if you stepped outside, went to the real world and interacted with real normal people, you would see plain as day my fucking source.
It's time for me to kill. And it's time for me to die.
You could not sound more insufferable or pretentious if you tried. Alright, so first, whatever happened to not interviewing random people earlier, yet somehow you now know the ongoings of every specific individual, enough to claim that, quote, normal people don't follow gaming? I just want you to know that I run into people all the time in the real world who know about and talk about video games. Now, that is anecdotal, but if he's pulling shit out of his ass, then so can I. Secondly, I find this to be a bit of a catch-22, because if most, quote, normal people only play the few games they care about, then how the fuck do they learn about said games to begin with if they're completely ignorant to gaming?
What kind of perspective are you talking about here? What is this perspective you're going for? A lot of people don't follow gaming that closely. Okay, what kind of people are you talking about here?
Do you have short-term memory loss? I literally just fucking stated I'm talking about from the perspective of a normal person.
Okay. I'll pull a page from your own book here, Krilix. Hey Brainlit, do you have fucking brain cancer? Because you clearly don't understand the fucking question he was asking. We know you said normal people. He wants an example of what you consider a normal person. Like, seriously? I feel like I'm having to explain this to an illiterate fucking 3-year-old who's still learning how to speak.
Because people play games like Forza or FIFA or look into games like that somehow means they don't look into games like Doom or Quake anymore?
Mind pointing out where the fuck I said that? Because nowhere throughout that clip did I even fucking hint at that. I stated people play the games they enjoy, and that's about it. Most people do not dive into the deep gaming news side of things. They just play the games they enjoy, and that's about it. I hope that someone with a room temperature IQ would at least be able to understand that, but I guess I was fucking wrong.
Yeah, we are all well aware of what you said, and reiterating it again as your response does nothing to help elaborate on it any further. You aren't entirely wrong that most people play a few games they enjoy, but that doesn't mean they're completely oblivious to other video games, video game news, or the market at all. Nier was just trying to make sense of what you meant, not put words in your mouth. And considering that all you did was regurgitate literally the exact same point, word for word, I can't say I blame him or anyone else for that being their takeaway from your statement. What you said isn't entirely false, but it doesn't mean those people don't follow any other gaming media. So, bit of a null point.
Oh, none have been successful besides, Wolfenstein The New Order, Proteus, Dusk, Ultra Kill, Wolfenstein 2 The New Colossus, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal.
Holy shit, my fucking ears. Loud does not equal funny. Please
Subjective.
keep that in mind to address your points. I've never heard of Dusk or fucking Proteus, and I play Arena.
You're living under a rock then.
How am I the one living under a rock? Dusk at its all-time high had 557 active players. Now it can barely reach 200, and Proteus can barely even reach 50 fucking players. How am I the one living under a fucking rock when I haven't played games no one fucking plays?
Yeah, to be fair, he wasn't referencing the player count, just more so how you've never heard of those games before, which, as a supposed fan of the arena shooter genre, like you were claiming before Nier cut you off, it's even more fucking surprising that you've never even heard of those games before. Like, I'm sorry dude, but a lot of your credibility on this topic dropped for me after hearing you be this fucking ignorant. I mean, for Christ's sakes, Dusk sold somewhere around 40 to 60,000 copies within the first month after it came out of early access, which is really good for an indie game. It was bad enough realizing you didn't watch the Actman's video, but now you're claiming irrelevancy because you hadn't heard of said games. I'll agree that I wish the multiplayers had more consistent players, but the point Nier was making is again, that a lot of people know about the fucking games regardless.
Especially Dusk. Dusk is extremely popular.
Oh, really?
Phew! Ugh. Excuse me.
A lot of people play Dusk. Let me check the Dusk concurrent player count. $229 playing 17 minutes ago, 238 24-hour peak, all-time peak 557.
This is 4K! How did they get you at 4K?
Fucking hell, man. So first of all, I like how you conveniently cut off Nier just so you can frame this to make him look bad. So first up, here's the full clip.
All-time peak 557. Yeah, it is dead, pretty much. Not dead, but it's got a pretty small constant player base here. But despite that, a lot of people know what Dusk is. People like Civi11 talked about Dusk.
So as you can see, Nier literally does admit that yes, the game is a much smaller and niche fanbase, and clarified that his point was a lot of people still know of and talk about these games regardless of concurrent player count. Glad I could help clarify that for you, you disingenuous bitch.
He's talking about multiplayer arena shooters, dumbass. No one has made a good arena shooter that is multiplayer as of
Example?
Do you realize what you just asked me? You asked me to provide an example of there being no good popular arena shooters that are multiplayer. How the fuck am I supposed to provide an example of that?
I mean, like, are you dense? That's a pretty basic fucking question to ask. He just wants proof to your point, and by saying there's been no good ones made recently, implies that there are still ones being made, and they're literally all terrible. Either that, or you're trying to claim that literally none have been made, period. Which, do I need to pull up the graph again? I think I might have to. So, unless you can elaborate, provide an example, and or proof to your point, then I think I'll have to call this what it actually is, just you throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks in favor of your own ignorance.
So, what classifies as a good arena shooter to you?
Well, Nier, to answer your question, it's a very, very simple answer. One that I have fun in.
Please do me a gigantic favor and take a long walk off a short dock.
That answer is about as useful as an inside-out fleshlight. I mean, holy fuck, dude, talk about sniffing your own farts. You know, if you're gonna respond to criticisms at all, and people ask for clarification so they understand the argument being made, that isn't an excuse to just be a narcissistic dipshit and completely deflect the question. So again, unless you can provide an actual existing example, I'm gonna take this as you just throwing more shit at the wall and giving pretentious backhanded statements to deflect from the actual question. I mean, Christ, dude, I expect this type of answer from a 5-year-old, not a grown-ass adult responding to another.
What do you define as a good arena shooter as of recent? What is the most recent good arena shooter that you can think of right now, Krilix?
Also, another really simple answer. We're talking about multiplayer arena shooters, which I assume you are. That would be Halo 5, which released in 2015, 8 years ago.
Alright, so if that's the case, then what about Halo Infinite? And before anyone brings up the game's player count, and regardless of if you personally liked it, Krilix, you cannot sit here and tell me that Halo Infinite is unpopular purely because of its arena shooter aspects. The game has flopped, sure, but that's due to very poor management and decisions being made by 343 with their priorities being entirely messed up surrounding the game. Most fans, including myself, are able to admit that they love the core gameplay of Halo Infinite. It's just everything else surrounding the game that sucks, and we all know that if it wasn't the case, it would have around 10 times the current player base it does. So with that context in mind, sure it's flopped, but it's still a recent and decent arena shooter, and one that I wish was a whole lot better, sure, but still really fun.
You want to know a really good arena shooter that came after Quake Champions? Dusk. Proteus.
Bro, I'm not touching Proteus. You can't even get 50 players into that game for multiplayer. And Dusk, once again, multiplayer's dead as fuck.
What's another good one? Shit, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Is it really on the tip of your tongue? Because I'm more inclined to believe that you just can't think of any more examples.
Well, regardless of if he has any more examples or not, the argument here is that they're still good arena shooters, which they are. I've played them. So, for an alleged fan of this genre, I find it even more odd that you so vehemently avoid Dusk and Proteus like this. I mean, for fuck's sakes, Dusk even got ported to consoles like the Switch. Let that sink in. But sure, they're not popular at all, I guess. You know, I'm gonna be real honest with you, Krilix. For an alleged fan of this genre, you really have no excuse to avoid these games.
Yeah, we can count Halo. We can count Halo as one. Halo Infinite.
You can't be serious right now. Halo Infinite was anything but competent at launch. The game launched with 6 maps, and it took them over a fucking year to add one singular gun that has already been in previous Halo games, might I add. Not to mention the fact that you couldn't even pick what mode you wanted to play when the game launched, and we still don't have basic ass game modes like Griff Ball or Infection.
This guy is really about to make me defend Halo Infinite. Okay. First, you hastily bring up the game only having 6 maps at launch, which is wrong. It had 10. You also gloss over the 3 maps that released after launch in favor of mentioning the one gun they made to paint them in a more negative light. Add on everything else you said about the game modes, and I'd say you're just trying to downplay Infinite, very disingenuously I will add. This does not invalidate the hype it had before launch and weight of the game, plus most people agree, again, that Infinite's core gameplay was amazing. All of which goes against your argument because Halo Infinite's issues are not related to its arena shooter aspects. Finally, if all it takes for an arena shooter to be good is to be fun, then by your logic, Infinite is good, because I definitely had a whole lot of fun.
He said it forces you to make more slower and methodical decisions.
Doom and Quake have a wide variety of...
Okay, but that also doesn't mean that he didn't invalidate quote-unquote decisions in games like Quake or Doom.
How on earth did he invalidate decision-making in Quake or Doom? He himself is on record saying you need to make decisions in Doom and Quake. What the fuck are you on about?
No one is arguing that he never said that shit. The point Actman was trying to make in that clip is that slowing down said decision making while being a new console shooter was somehow a threat to arena shooters at the time, and that it could, quote, somehow be more interesting than the decision making in existing arena shooters. It isn't outright trying to invalidate the decisions in Doom, but it is subtly doing it.
So how is GoldenEye any different on how it plays compared to Doom or Quake?
You serious?
Holy shit, your intelligence level is fucking mind-blowing. What kind of knuckle-dragging retard actually asks that question? Especially from someone like you, who plays fucking arena shooters.
Alright, I guess you didn't hear me so well last time, Krilix, so again, if you're going to respond to criticism, and people ask for an elaboration, that's not some golden opportunity to be an insufferable douche. He isn't saying there's no difference in how the games play. He's asking what the difference in the decision-making is besides the speed of the game, which, let's not forget, are bogged down for GoldenEye, not just because of its gameplay, but also its controls, which have aged about as well as a meth-addicted grandma. So you know, we are still waiting for a legitimate answer.
Debate has been had over whether Halo is an arena shooter or not. While I think it's much more similar to this older genre of game than something like Call of Duty, anyone who's played Quake or Doom will tell you, fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
Once again, I must point out, where the fuck did the thread go? But anyways, in my joke comment, as a Halo and Quake player, Halo is an arena shooter. Try to argue against that, Actman.
Movement is much slower. You can only carry 2 weapons, not to mention melee and grenades weren't treated as their own weapons on a dial, regenerating health, etc.
Alright, I want everyone to keep this clip in mind. Actman is saying that Halo isn't an arena shooter.
Dude, were you fucking dropped on your head as a child? Where did he state that he believes Halo is not an arena shooter? If you actually listen to what he fucking said, he's talking about the people who primarily play Doom and Quake.
Huh? Anyone who's played Quake or Doom will tell you, fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
I mean, dude, I just love the fucking mental gymnastics on display here. You had to have been bullied in school if you're legitimately stupid enough to deny how Actman is claiming Halo isn't an arena shooter. And if anything, he's trying to use the people who play Doom and Quake, who think as such, as some kind of proof to his point. This is further proved by the fact that he literally runs with this narrative throughout the video and claims that mechanics a part of Halo 3 denied arena shooter relevancy in gaming, and said they were antithetical to the core of arena shooters. Like, I hate to break it to you, Krilix, but there's such a thing as subtlety in conversation, and if you're literally too stupid to see that he's running with this narrative, then you really lost the rest of your credibility for this video.
So what about that makes it so that he isn't claiming that Halo isn't an arena shooter?
I don't know. Maybe the fact he didn't fucking say it? God, and I thought you'd actually start thinking before you spoke, after that Discord drama video made on Griffin. But I guess I stand corrected.
Misery, misery, misery. That's what you've chosen.
Wait, what? Why the fuck are we bringing that up right now? Dude, you're literally proving my point that you're just pulling a Stark and will jump on any opportunity to hurl disingenuous insults, rather than giving an actual fucking response. And again, do I really need to reiterate how fucking moronic you have to be to try and deny that Actman is running with that narrative?
But if you look at arena shooters nowadays, they have changed. They were able to adapt, and therefore they have been able to be successful.
No, the core gameplay of arena shooters is still very much the same. You have the no weapons.
Yeah, the core gameplay. But what about the innovations that games like Ultra Kill made? Even though that's kind of conflating arena shooters with boomer shooters in general, doesn't mean that they're the exact same game. Sure, the core gameplay is there, it's the same, but different arena shooters or different boomer shooters have innovative mechanics.
Make sure y'all prepare yourselves for the absolute mental midgetry about to take place here.
Ultra Kill has the marksman pistol. You flip a coin, you shoot it, it reflects to a nearby enemy, and it targets its weak spot.
How is that innovative? That is more of a gimmick or a quirk about the game. That's not fucking innovative. It's just like shooting a demon's weak point with a ballista with extra fucking steps.
Wait, that's not innovative to you? What the fuck? Alright, well, what other arena shooter, or hell, any first-person shooter for that matter, has you shooting coins to hit enemy weak points for extra damage on top of the weak point damage? The way you describe it just goes to show me how disingenuously you're trying to downplay any opposing argument that threatens yours. I don't know how this isn't innovative, and calling it a gimmick doesn't mean it isn't innovation. I mean, Splitgate being just Halo with portals was only adding a portal gimmick into Halo's formula. That doesn't mean it's not innovation, so what the fuck is your point?
Proteus. Every single weapon has an alt fire.
How is Proteus the one that innovated on that? Doom Eternal came out first, and every single weapon had an alt fire. In fact, the alt fire in Doom Eternal could completely change how you use the weapon.
I love how you don't even fucking deny the original argument that weapon mods were and are innovations to arena shooters, but instead you decide to go full, actually, Doom 2016 did it first. I mean, yeah, sure, Proteus didn't do it first, but it did do some of them differently. And you aren't even refuting that they were innovations, so GG unlucky pal, you played yourself twice.
And it has its own map editor, where you can create custom levels, even for the multiplayer.
I hate to break it to you, but Halo 3 did that 13 years before Proteus came out, and these guys are trying to say I did no fucking research.
Halo 3, a game that came out in 2007, and strictly on consoles at the time, has nowhere near a level editor comparable to the likes of Proteus. You can make entire fucking campaigns in that level editor, and to deny how Proteus innovated on level editing in first-person shooters is absolutely astounding. It doesn't have to be the first one to do it for it to innovate on top of the idea, dumbass.
Dusk. You can do front flips and back flips in Dusk.
He's gay!
I mean, you can downplay its significance all you like, but is that still not new, different, and innovative? Jesus fuck, you really are a disingenuous little bitch through this entire video.
Titanfall 2, you had the new grappling hook mechanic that very much increased the movement speed of the game.
I thought we were talking about arena shooters. Where the fuck did Titanfall 2 come from? And if you're really out here trying to call Titanfall 2 an arena shooter, then you better be calling Call of Duty an arena shooter, because Titanfall is literally Call of Duty with faster paced movement and fucking mechs. And once again, these guys are trying to harp on me from my lack of research.
So even though I agree and don't really consider Titanfall 2 an arena shooter, I can still understand the arguments people make in favor of it being one, similar to Halo. That being said, Nier does consider it an arena shooter, and if that's the case, then of course he'd consider the grapple hook from something like Titanfall 2 an innovation. And there's not much you can really do to downplay that, just argue against whether it is or isn't said genre. But there's more he does bring up about Titanfall 2 later on, so I'll just dissect each point as we go.
Yeah, and Doom 3 fucking sucked. What's your point?
His point was that Doom was no longer an arena shooter at that point in time, further showing how arena shooters were dying off. Do you have basic comprehension skills, or are you really just this fucking stupid?
So because Doom 3 was entirely different compared to its predecessors, that means the genre's dead.
No, but it definitely contributed to the fall in popularity of arena shooters, which, you know, is exactly what I stated, but you know, it's no surprise that your dumbass had trouble comprehending that.
I mean, that isn't really a counter to his point, because you're still agreeing with Actman's overall point on the decline or fall of arena shooters, which his overall narrative was that they died off. Nier making the small stretch to the conclusion that he did isn't so absurd given the context. But you know, it's no surprise that a dumbass like you has trouble comprehending that, especially when arguing over a video you never even fully watched.
So just cause Doom 3 was massively different, that means somehow the genre's dead.
You know, by your same logic, it is completely impossible for any game genre to die because they can just go back and play previous iterations of said genre, which is completely stupid because most people are not going to want to downgrade that much on the main game they play. And just so your atom-sized brain can understand it, by most people, I mean most normal people. Normal people.
I mean, dude, that's quite literally how game preservation fucking works. What the fuck are you even saying? They may not be as popular, but they are most certainly alive and playable games, regardless of if you want to deny the validity of his argument, because most, quote, normal people aren't gonna want to do X, Y, or Z just to play said games. Which is utterly retarded, by the way. By that logic, emulation wouldn't be popular whatsoever. Which, by the way, I'm still waiting for your definition of what counts as a fucking quote-unquote normal person.
The once mighty pie that arena shooters alone used to feast on was being consumed by many others.
Yeah, because those other...
So Actman's argument here is that arena shooters were becoming more irrelevant because of games like Counter-Strike or Battlefield or Medal of Honor or Call of Duty. Which is fair because the mass market appeal. But just because there's a mass market appeal for those games doesn't mean the genre's dead, because clearly there's still an audience there. Now here's Thunderstruck's argument.
Kinds of shooters that were previously swimming in this primordial soup were finally able to come into their own. Whether they be story-driven games like Half-Life 2, survival horror games like System Shock, or something more arcadey like Halo and later Call of Duty.
Hey dumbass, you just fucking repeated what he was saying. You literally took what he said.
Did he really repeat what Actman was saying? It sounded more like he was arguing in favor of the arena shooter genre and how it was evolving.
You went full retard, man.
Oh, well did he now? Well, would you be so kind as to point out the example of how he explained that? Because if you go back and watch the clip, you can see that nowhere in that clip did he say that. Oh, and earlier in the stream, were you not trying to insult me on not being able to listen to what was being said?
What? I fucking can't, man. This is so stupid. At this point, this has just become a debate of semantics. But, you know, for once in my life, I think I'll actually quote Griffin from during his Bring Halo Back drama. This motherfucker likes to pretend that there isn't such a thing as subtlety in conversation. Like, sure, Thunderstruck didn't outright state it, but he most certainly implied that those games, or at least some of them, were just evolutions and subgenres coming into their own. It isn't regurgitating the same thing Actman said, when Thunderstruck is implying arena shooters didn't suffer as a result of these games or subgenres finally coming into existence. Like, I can't believe I actually had to break this down for you. This was literally the first conclusion I could draw based on what Thunderstruck said.
But no, he's just regurgitating what Actman said. Thunderstruck, am I wrong? Aren't you arguing in favor of the arena shooter genre and how they were evolving?
Hold up. Wait a minute.
First of all, like I said earlier, I would love for you to point out where at all he even remotely hinted at saying that. Secondly, throughout this entire live stream, you are talking about the Actman being completely biased against arena shooters, but yet you're going to ask Thunderstruck, which, might I add, couldn't be more of a biased party in this situation, if he said something that he clearly did not say in the video clip. Of course he's going to say everything he can to make himself not look fucking stupid. I don't understand how you watched the clip twice and still did not understand it.
Krilix, I could say the same thing to you about not understanding it twice. Until your response came out, there was no confusion on what he was saying in that clip. Secondly, the bias Nier or any of us refer to from Actman pertains to how he talks about certain games while breezing past or outright ignoring others. He literally had a double standard between Halo and Splitgate being arena shooters. That isn't comparable to what is happening now. So why shouldn't we ask Thunderstruck? Let's break this down. You accuse him of trying to save face essentially, and I really can't help but call you out for massive levels of projection, my guy. This is coming from the same douche who started his response with, "I have nothing to apologize for," before even addressing criticisms. You do nothing but hurl demeaning remarks whenever faced with legitimate critiques or questions about your video. Like, I've even seen Thunderstruck admit when he gets things wrong or words them poorly, so if anything, it is completely justified in getting his input when you're accusing him of something he did not do. Not letting him give his input now would be like saying Actman can't correct himself after being called out for mistakes in his video, and that is blindly fucking retarded, dude.
Saying that arena shooters were still doing fine, but now other types of shooters were also doing fine. That's fair. That's basically saying that a genre still has an audience, despite the mass market appeal going towards games like Call of Duty.
Okay, let me lay this out as simply as possible for your dumbass, okay? The Actman stated that the arena shooter audience had started to dwindle because of the release and popularity of newer shooters that were not of the arena shooter genre. And then Thunderstruck proceeded to say the exact same thing. So please tell me where the differences lie. Also, side note, a game can have an audience and still be irrelevant. This is not me nitpicking as you guys kept bringing this game up, but for example, Proteus has an audience on average of 50 to 60 players. If that isn't the definition of an irrelevant game, I don't know what the fuck is.
I've literally already explained what Thunderstruck was implying twice now for your preschooler levels of comprehension. Secondly, I'd say the definition of something near irrelevant would be a game that almost nobody has heard of. The niche number of concurrent players does not prove your point of irrelevancy. You're somewhat conflating the idea of irrelevancy with popularity and success. It is indie, and it is a fairly underground game, and it's still managed to be pretty popular.
Once the Xbox One and PS4 generation kicked off, then arena shooters really started to come back and showed that they were certainly alive and well.
I want you to do me a quick favor here, okay? Can you name one multiplayer arena shooter that was alive anywhere near to the point of Halo or Call of Duty?
Doom 2016.
You may have the slightest bit of an argument if you're talking about purely the first month of Doom 2016's release. After that, the player count drops drastically speaking. And I'm not saying I prefer it this way. I played the shit out of Doom 2016, but I'm not trying to deny the facts that arena shooters as a whole are pretty much dead with the exception of Doom. And when it comes to the multiplayer side of things, they're pretty much all dead.
Shut the fuck up! Know your fucking place, trash!
Alright, 1. Name me any shooter, for that matter, that comes anywhere close to the numbers that Call of Duty gets, because it's literally in a league of its own. And I especially want to hammer this into your dense fucking skull. No one here is trying to argue that arena shooters are as big as they were in the 90s or as big as Call of Duty, but we're also not stupid enough to call the genre irrelevant as a result. 2. You're not wrong that the player base evaporated for Doom 2016 pretty quickly, but you still recognize it existed, it was sizable at launch, and you loved the game. That does not scream irrelevant genre to me, from your own fucking words. And 3, I just want to twist your own words against you again, because it is pretty fun to do. So, if you had fun in Doom 2016, then doesn't that equal a good arena shooter by your own logic?
One that I have fun in.
But it was alive. The multiplayer on Doom 2016 was alive. Are we gonna ignore that game's existence now?
I mean, if you want to count 1,000 players on average as a multiplayer game being alive and well, then yeah, I guess you could say Doom 2016's multiplayer was alive and well. But then again, that's a very, very low standard to call a game alive and well. Oh, and I'd also like to mention that that's assuming that all players that were online at that time were playing the multiplayer instead of the single player, which, you know, most people played Doom 2016 for.
That wasn't what Nier was arguing, because he literally just mentioned how the player base is nowhere near the size it was at launch, but you conveniently ignore that here. What he's saying is that the audience was still there at the time, even if it dwindled to what it is now, which does not scream irrelevancy, just that the player base died off too quickly. People were still interested in it though, and add on top that the current players are likely not all ones from the game's peak when it launched, which means even more and different new players. I'm not arguing the game is heavily populated now, but I really had to clarify this since you take every chance to twist what people say and or downplay their points entirely.
Technically, we can also count Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is an arena shooter. At least the multiplayer side.
1. Halo Infinite launched like dog shit. 2. Halo Infinite can't even get a higher player count than Battlefield 2042, and that is fucking sad. And 3. Halo Infinite came out a year after the Series X launched. He's talking about the Xbox One generation, dipshit.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Okay, refer to my earlier points I made in regards to the game's launch, but we both know the player counts would be 10 times bigger if 343 had their shit together. The game's decline has nothing to do with its arena shooter aspects, but rather with the management of and stuff outside of the gameplay. So you are being disingenuous yet again, though you're actually right that Infinite was planned as a launch title for the Series X, but was delayed by a year. I'm willing to bet Nier probably forgot that level of context in Thunderstruck's point at the time in regards to Infinite specifically. However, if arena shooter multiplayers like Infinite's are still being made an entire generation later than Thunderstruck's point, what is yours exactly?
FPS
Dusk even. That's not on console, but Dusk.
Well, at least you named a game from that generation, but that's completely overshadowed with the fact that Dusk at its peak had 557 players playing at the same time. I said anywhere near to the point of Halo or Call of Duty. Are you seriously out here trying to tell me that Dusk was anywhere close at all to being in the popularity of Halo or Call of Duty? The amount of stupidity in this video is fucking insane on your part. I thought you at least had room temperature IQ, but at this point I'm thinking it's more towards freezing levels.
I mean, COD is a ridiculous fucking standard as it's literally in a league of its own. And your question is also a bit oxymoronic when you include Halo as an arena shooter but then ask for any arena shooters alive to the point of Halo. Lastly, a game does not need to pull in COD numbers to be considered good or popular. But hey, to really entertain the topic, I'll give you an example of an arena shooter with some decent numbers just to satisfy you. Team Fortress 2. Yeah, I know it didn't come out during the generation we're speaking of, and it isn't a traditional arena shooter, but considering its roots in Quake via Team Fortress Classic, you can't deny its outright relation to the genre. And similarly with Halo, I will argue that TF2 is just its own evolution on arena shooters, which still pulls in fairly decent numbers all things considered. Seriously, games like this and Halo should really be all the proof we need to show the genre is alive.
Battlefield, Call of Duty, and Halo were a lot more social than any of the Quake, Doom, or Duke Nukem games.
Again, just because the mass market preferred those games over arena shooters, that doesn't mean the audience for that genre is non-existent now.
I never said the audience was non-existent. Hell, they're my favorite type of shooter to fucking play. However, I'm not the one in denial saying that multiplayer arena shooters are alive and well.
No one here is in denial. I have listed examples like Halo Infinite and Team Fortress 2 throughout this video, as well as debunking your disingenuous downplaying of Infinite and clarifying why it didn't succeed. I've explained how you conflate success and popularity with relevancy, so it's okay, Krilix. You can admit to being wrong and not doing all your research. You can admit to just wanting to talk shit. I'll wait.
It's more like you're coming up with excuses to defend Actman here.
Oh, am I now? Because it appears to me that you're reaching as far as humanly possible to defend your little friend Thunderstruck over there, no matter how stupid his statements are. You know, you talk a lot about biases in this live stream, so why don't you go ahead and look in the mirror?
I mean, is it really reaching though? You've been arguing in bad faith for a video you never watched, and you cut off Thunderstruck and Nier or leave out important details multiple times to make them look bad. And you're also the same retarded fucking troglodyte that's tried doubling down on the Actman not having double standards with Halo being an arena shooter, all while claiming you had nothing to apologize for at the start of this. So yeah, definitely sounds like you're making excuses to me.
Oh hey, that's another game we can name that's on console and appeal to the mass market. Titanfall. We can add that to the list. Thank you, Krilix.
Look, here's the thing. Fine. Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
Are you mentally fucking retarded? How is Titanfall 2 at all a fucking arena shooter? The only thing you could remotely call an arena shooter aspect of Titanfall 2 is the movement speed. Everything else goes completely against what arena shooters stand for. There is no fucking even starts. You start with a loadout that you make that you can put literally anything in there. There are no weapon pickups around the map. There are no power-ups. How the fuck is Titanfall 2 at all an arena shooter, you knuckle-dragging retard?
Oh, this is exactly what I meant earlier about being an insufferable douche. Like, you really do sound like an alcoholic on their period, not gonna lie. Back to the main point, though. I don't consider Titanfall 2 an arena shooter myself, but for the sake of devil's advocacy, not everything you listed discredits it from being one. Halo 4 and Doom 2016 had loadouts themselves, and Halo technically has had mechs and vehicles, with 4 to 5 especially, albeit not earned like a power-up. So then we have to consider stuff like ordnance drops in Halo 4 and rec packs in 5, which, oh no, Halo 5 was your last favorite arena shooter, wasn't it? Guess not anymore by this logic. Oh well.
What about Titanfall separates itself from the arena shooter genre? Explain. Explain, Krilix! What about Titanfall's mechanics arbitrarily separates itself from the arena shooter genre? Explain yourself.
Okay, I cannot be bothered to go back and look at the beginning of the stream, but if I remember correctly, you stated that you have never played Titanfall 2 before. So talk about a lack of fucking research. I cannot be bothered to go back and look at the beginning of the stream.
Well, he did play the first game and can easily just compare gameplay from the second one to the first, which from what I can tell, isn't that vastly different. Also, you're really one to talk about a lack of research, especially when jumping to conclusions like you just did, while admitting to not even wanting to look back through the stream to confirm your statement. Which, what do you know, it still blew up in your face. Like seriously, rules for thee, but not for me.
But I am so eager to answer your question. Let's start off. First of all, there's fucking loadouts. What arena shooter allows you to customize every single bit of your fucking kit? Alright, there is regenerating health, there's a 2-weapon limit, which I know Halo and Splitgate have a 2-weapon limit. They are still arena shooters, but not nearly as much as a game like Quake. And on top of all that, unless you're picking up weapons from dead players or dead AI, there is nothing to go around and fucking pick up. Everything you start with in your fucking inventory. How much further away from an arena shooter can you fucking get? How the fuck are you going to try and harp on me for a quote lack of research when you're making dumbass comments like fucking this?
I'm not yielding, I'm not backing down, I'm annoyed!
I think I can literally refer to my previous statement for nearly all of your points. Secondly, I even agree with you the game isn't an arena shooter, but I really want to play devil's advocate with you, so... You destroyed most of your own arguments when bringing up Halo and Splitgate, not to mention Halo 4 and Doom 2016 had loadouts and were still arena shooters. The only real point you have is picking stuff up on the map, which yeah, that's fair. I'll give you that one.
How is that a reach? What? Voice chat and text are literally how you communicate in multiplayer. What? 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 Really? That's a reach?
So you're gonna sit there and try and tell me that doing this is the same as doing this?
You guys fucking learn how to actually play the fucking game and talk.
Shoot a gun, dog. Learn how to fucking shoot a gun, you fucking riot shield. What else you want me to do? Oh, riot shield! I'm a pussy that use riot shield!
So, before I get into the main point, I just have to ask, why do you type so fucking slow, dude? Alright, back to the point at hand. Now, hilariously, part of your dumb argument revolves around text censorship, which games were not nearly that censored at the time Actman was talking about, and none of us are trying to argue that they're exactly the same, nor denying the innovations of voice chat. Nier just said that they're both how you communicate in video games. So, you really have to stretch to strawman this hard, dude, and you come off as desperate for any kind of win that makes you look good.
Like I said, it's ironic how you try and trash Actman for his biases, but are completely blind to your own.
You literally made a straw man argument to try and argue against him, and make the both of them look bad when neither were making the point the two were the exact same. You rag on Nier for trashing Actman's bias while claiming he's blind to his own, when you don't even know what the fuck you're arguing about. If anyone is blinded by bias here, I'd say it's definitely you with the Actman.
Titans, loadouts, chosen abilities, it's not a traditional arena shooter. I'm not arguing that it is a traditional arena shooter, but what I am saying is that Titanfall has a lot of arena shooter DNA within it. It has a really fast movement. It's got a lot of different guns you can use.
By your same fucking logic, games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019, Destiny fucking 2 are arena shooters by those requirements. You can't even hold on to your own definition of a fucking arena shooter, and you want to sit here and try and argue with me whether or not arena shooters are dead in the multiplayer scene? Yeah, you're fucking stupid.
Oh, it burns!
I mean, sure, he listed 2 mediocre examples and you quickly cut him off before he can add any more to his point, which, like I said earlier, I got Nier to remark on his thoughts because I genuinely have no stakes in this part of the argument. I personally agree that Titanfall 2 isn't really an arena shooter, but I also understand the arguments that Nier makes in favor of it being an evolution of traditional arena shooters. And if anything, making this video on you, Krilix, has only added to his argument about it being an arena shooter. But you know, I'm also willing to bet you would have a lot less cocky and pretentious energy if you were arguing this topic in a live setting and not able to just cut people off when it's convenient for you. At least I have the courtesy to respond to your full clips.
I would argue that Titans in Titanfall are more so an evolution of the arena shooter genre.
You see, you state this, but give no examples how, and if I remember correctly, you haven't played the fucking game, so how the fuck are you supposed to know if it's an arena shooter or not? Because clearly you have not looked into the game very deeply whatsoever if you're trying to claim Titans are an evolution of an arena shooter.
He literally played the first one and can easily compare the two. Now, to really throw a wrench in your logic, Doom 2016 had the fucking random demon power-ups, but that was still an arena shooter. Halo 4 had random ordnance drops. Halo 5 had rec packs where you could literally spawn in uber powerful vehicles, and you claimed Halo 5 was the last good arena shooter to you. So I really have to ask, how the fuck are Titans where you decide to draw the line here, you fucking mongoloid?
It's more proof that arena shooters are evolving, especially Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is extremely fast, which a lot of arena shooters are known for.
Just because a game is fast-paced does not make it an arena shooter, dipshit.
I'm sorry, but I have to pull another page from you yourself here, Krilix. Can you please go back and point out to me where exactly he said, or even fucking hinted at the idea that just because a game is fast, that makes it an arena shooter in that clip? It sounded more like Nier was just elaborating by adding onto his point and or listing off similarities to arena shooters. But nowhere did he even fucking imply what you were accusing him of. Again, another straw man here, dipshit.
And I would argue that Titanfall, like Titans, are just another example of an evolution of the genre.
Once again, you state that, but give no fucking examples whatsoever. What about calling in a Titan that you made a loadout for screams arena shooter to you?
Do the demons in Doom 2016 scream arena shooter? The vehicles in Halo? Or the rec packs in Halo 5 where you can spawn in busted variants of vehicles? Do any of those scream arena shooter to you at first glance? He's just saying they added something different into the existing formula. However, yeah, I do agree that Nier could have given an example or two on why he thinks that during the stream, but you are still a condescending man-child trying to twist his words.
Sure, it may not be a straight-up arena shooter, but it has arena shooter DNA within it, kind of like Halo does.
Halo and Titanfall are not comparable whatso-fucking-ever, no matter how hard you're trying to reach. How on earth did you say this without realizing you look like a fucking dumbass?
Strawmanning.
Huh? This is either the straw man of all straw mans, or you blatantly have some kind of mental deficiency. How on earth did you come to that conclusion based on what he said? He never said or even tried implying that he was comparing the gameplay of either game or saying they play alike. His entire point was that Titanfall 2 has traces of arena shooter DNA, and just used Halo as an example of another game that took its own spin or evolution on the genre, but still has traces of arena shooter DNA within it. How you jump to the conclusion that he was saying either games are alike or play alike is beyond retarded. And you've honestly reached a new low in the video with this one, pal.
I remember you saying multiplayer defines it as an arena shooter. Are you sure that should define it? Because I disagree. Why do you disagree with that?
I swear, you were looking for any reason to claim that arena shooters are not dead in the multiplayer side of things. You have such a loose definition of an arena shooter. You can count any multiplayer shooter as an arena shooter. It means games like Fortnite, games like Call of Duty, games like Battlefield, games like Titanfall. All of those are apparently arena shooters according to you.
I swear to God, I'm honestly astonished that you managed to strawman Nier at almost every opportunity. Someone in his chat was asking him for clarifications on a prior statement, and you take that chance to twist what was being said? He's not saying literally any multiplayer shooter counts as an arena shooter, motherfucker. Just that in order for a game to even be considered an arena shooter, it has to have a multiplayer component. Seriously, how do you even get to that conclusion based on him reading that chat message?
According to like FPS experts, an arena shooter is defined as like a multiplayer only like game that takes place in arenas.
And those supposed FPS experts are fucking stupid.
What? What the fuck?
Yeah, you're still running with the idea that what he's saying is any multiplayer shooter, and he isn't. Just that they need a multiplayer component to even begin being considered one. I swear, if you bring this up again at all, I'm not repeating myself.
Because then all the single-player arena shooters aren't arena shooters, then yeah, multiplayer arena shooters are most certainly dying. Maybe.
And how did he destroy his own argument? I also again love how you conveniently cut him off as well before his actual response. But yeah, when games like Halo and TF2 exist, and the release of arena shooters have been on a massive incline for the last 10 years, how are they dying? This seriously does nothing for your argument.
I don't think they're dying more so than a lot of different genres of games are just taking the spotlight.
How you have not overdosed with the amount of copium you are injecting into your veins right now is fucking beyond me.
And how you haven't either died from alcohol poisoning or died from blood loss due to the never-ending period you're on is beyond me as well. It isn't hard to understand. Games like COD have taken the mass market spotlight, arena shooters still exist, and there is still a market for them in spite of that.
Because clearly the arena shooter genre has an audience still.
When Halo and TF2 exist, the genre is totally dead. When indie games like Proteus and Dusk sell as well as they do, there's totally no market for the genre. When Doom 2016 had over 80,000 players at its peak, the genre is dead. Halo Infinite even had 250,000 players at its peak, for Christ's sake. And like I said earlier, current player counts would be much higher if the game was just managed better.
Like the fact that Actman made this video to begin with, and people, like several people took issue with it. Like a lot of people took issue with it.
Oh, really?
Yes, really, dumbass. He wasn't referring to the ratio on Actman's video. He was referring to the several people who have made a response to Actman, and anyone calling him out in the comments and on Twitter.
This dude is literally taking a page out of Quantum TV's book, which, you know, that's never really a good sign of a mentally stable individual.
You deserve an Olympic gold medal for the amount of mental fucking gymnastics you're pulling here. How is he at all pulling a page out of Quantum TV's book?
Maybe let the video play, and he'll explain.
You see, I don't know if you're legally blind, but if you looked at where you paused, it's playing the video clip, dumbass. It's playing the video clip, dumbass.
No shit.
Dude, you really need to stop smelling your own shit. The point Nier was making is that you preemptively cut off Thunderstruck in the middle of explaining his point just to insult him when he's literally about to answer your backhanded question. Nier was calling you out for being a disingenuous bitch for cutting him off to do that. Like seriously, where do you get off at pulling this pretentious shit? Honestly, I really do think you have a superiority complex, which just makes you come off as even more pathetic.
But right here, he's expressing the same attitude that Quantum TV had towards Elden Ring.
No, Quantum TV said that a game that isn't made for everyone shouldn't be made at all. What Actman is saying is that the game isn't that accessible to newer players because of the amount of skill gap that there is between the low skill player and the high skill player.
And what does that say about Elden Ring then?
Elden Ring is a primarily single player game. Yeah, you can go up against other players in PvP, but most normal people play Elden Ring for the single player.
And it's still the same, this game is too difficult, therefore it's an accessible argument all over again, so what's your fucking point?
Because remember, Actman defended Elden Ring for not being accessible to new players. So that argument falls flat on its face.
Does it really though? Because what I just said is factually true. Games that have a high skill gap tend to not get very many new players into their game versus games with a low skill gap like Call of Duty. There's a reason Call of Duty is so popular. Of course there will be exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, that tends to be how things work. Not to mention, part of the fun from Elden Ring comes from the trial and error of learning a boss's attacks and figuring out how best to beat it. Dying to a boss in Elden Ring and going to your last save point is completely different than being absolutely obliterated by a player with thousands of hours, losing your entire weapon inventory.
Alright, bullshit meter just ticked up 3 more notches. I'm about 14 pages into the script, so this video is already gonna be a fucking movie. Ugh. Okay, going by the argument you provided about skill gaps and having lower players while having exceptions leads me to conclude that you're trying to call a game like Elden Ring an exception. So Doom 2016, Doom Eternal, every Halo, any other Souls game for that matter, oh and let's throw in roguelikes too like Risk of Rain, all have high skill gaps in some way or another. Are you really calling all of them exceptions to the rule? Second, your point about the fun in Elden Ring is entirely subjective, and in fact Souls games have a huge dedicated PvP audience, so I love how you just generalized all Souls fans for your argument. Third, what you said about dying to a boss versus dying to a player and losing everything is retarded. First of all, why are genres like roguelikes even remotely successful, seeing as some of the same logic applies, that being you lose everything upon death and there's a high skill gap. And the final nail in the coffin to your abortion of an argument, I'm sure more people would say that fighting a real-life player in PvP is probably easier than killing a boss like Malenia. That skill gap does not deter games like Elden Ring from being a massive success. Like, you really do have to either be especially dumb or just trying to come up with excuses for the Actman to not see how he's recreating the whole accessibility argument.
Like in Halo Infinite, I've seen many people in the community bitch about how the Mangler is too overpowered, or in the more recent Call of Duty games, people complaining about slide canceling or some other shit. Wherever there's an online multiplayer game and an online community of people around that game, there's gonna be those kinds of people that are just gonna bitch about the game being unbalanced or whatever.
No, a game being unbalanced is completely different from a game having a high skill ceiling. It doesn't take any skill to shoot someone with a Mangler than melee them. It doesn't take any skill to shoot someone with a Mangler than melee them.
Wrong. That is absolutely wrong. Proved over and over again. Wrong.
It doesn't take any skill to double tap B to slide cancel. It does take actual skill to properly rocket jump and B-hop around the map.
Yeah, you completely missed Thunderstruck's point again, which was that online communities are always going to bitch about skill gaps or broken mechanics in a game, even when they aren't an actual issue. That was his entire point, and the fact that that went entirely over your head is just astonishing to me.
But according to Actman and a bunch of people, apparently, that's gatekeeping.
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Ironic. So what happened to arena shooters? Gatekeeping happened.
Man, it's times like this where you not watching the Actman's video really fucking shows.
Or single player only, because that's what the majority of arena shooter players play the games for.
How are we supposed to play it for something else when there's no other fucking option? If it's only single player, there's no option to play multiplayer. I would love nothing more than to play Doom Eternal's combat in a deathmatch setting. But guess what? That doesn't fucking exist because they're single player only. Battle mode doesn't fucking count.
All the franchises.
Why doesn't battle mode? Why does battle mode not count?
You literally tried claiming that I don't listen earlier in the video, and you're gonna try saying that? I literally said I would like to play Doom Eternal's combat loop in a deathmatch setting. Please tell me how battle mode is anything like a traditional arena shooter deathmatch.
So instead of actually explaining how the two are different, you decide to answer Nier's question with another question and want him to explain it to you. I don't think that's how that works.
And with its sequel, Eternal, they ditched the entire concept of arena multiplayer entirely in favor of making this one mode that I played 3 times and never touched again.
But that's technically an arena shooter.
Dude, by your definition, almost every single shooter is an arena shooter.
Your definition has also been askewed, which I've highlighted significantly throughout this video. Now, like I said earlier, I'm not repeating my points about him considering all multiplayers an arena shooter, so just stop running with that narrative already.
It's multiplayer, it takes place in an arena, and you fight people. It's a multiplayer arena.
Bro, you sound about as intelligent as Kamala Harris right now whenever she tries to make a speech.
And you sound like an angry alcoholic who's one bad day away from shooting up a Walmart. See, I can hurl baseless insults that don't address the points at hand too. Now, I like how you still avoid addressing his points, so unless you have anything to refute the argument or add in, then maybe just shut the fuck up and take the L.
And it has its own spin on the genre, with it being round-based.
Hey, I don't mean to burst your bubble or anything, but there's been game modes that are round-based in shooter games for a very, very long time. Battle mode is not innovating because it has rounds.
Alright, to be fair, Nier was trying to list off things about Eternal's battle mode off the top of his head in the middle of a stream. The point I'm getting at is I'll agree Nier worded things poorly at the time, but he wasn't trying to call the rounds in battle mode an innovation. He was referring to the mechanics surrounding the rounds, like the demons and Slayer all getting a new perk each round. That's what he meant by taking their own spin.
Anyone who's played Quake or Doom will tell you, fuck no, Halo isn't an arena shooter.
See why I told y'all to remember that clip? Earlier he labeled Halo as not being an arena shooter, but now he's labeling Splitgate as being an arena shooter.
He never fucking said Halo wasn't an arena shooter. He was saying—
Yes, he did. Not outright, but he implied it because he's running with the narrative that people don't consider Halo an arena shooter. He's arguing in favor of those people saying that Halo isn't an arena shooter, so what's your fucking point?
Well, if you actually paid attention earlier in the video, which I assume you at least tried to, you would have seen that I stated the Actman is simply talking about people who primarily play Doom or Quake. I know you yourself stated that you as a Doom and Quake player do believe Halo is an arena shooter, but once again, there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. Now, with that out of the way, you yourself admitted that the Actman never stated that Halo was nor wasn't an arena shooter. With that in mind, is it not therefore reasonable to believe that if he thinks Splitgate, which is just Halo with portals, is an arena shooter, that he believes that Halo is also an arena shooter?
The release of COD 4 and Halo 3 pretty much sealed the fate of arena shooters and denied their future relevance in gaming. If you weren't willing to adapt, you weren't going to succeed. They had slower movement, regenerating health, a 2-weapon inventory. These things were antithetical to the core of arena shooters.
Right, dude. He totally didn't run with the narrative that Halo isn't an arena shooter, and totally didn't attribute Halo 3 as one of the games denying their relevancy. Him saying Splitgate is an arena shooter is just an oblivious, blatant contradiction or double standard. No amount of your mental gymnastics or pseudo-intellectualism is going to be enough to twist around what Actman said.
That other people who play Doom and Quake do not label it as an arena shooter.
I play Doom and Quake. Guess what? Halo's an arena shooter. And you also agreed with me that it is an arena shooter. So your argument still falls flat on its face.
Does it really though? Because we literally have an example of someone who plays arena shooters like Doom and Quake that specifically states Halo is not an arena shooter in your own chat. He just so happens to be the very same person that is in this video. The fact that you cannot comprehend that there are exceptions to generalization is fucking mind-boggling to me.
Can you not understand that even though he doesn't consider it one himself, he's still able to understand the argument of how Halo is one? I mean, Nier and him are still in agreement that Actman contradicted himself and ran with the narrative in his video. As a result, you're basically implying that Nier can't argue in good faith for his friend, despite their disagreement. This coming from the guy who's arguing in bad faith for the Actman. This is also besides the point. The argument does fall flat on its face because it's extremely anecdotal, and that's kind of Nier's point. Actman used an anecdote as proof to spin a narrative.
Oh, you know, besides Wolfenstein the New Order, Wolfenstein 2 the New Colossus, Doom 2016, Doom Eternal.
I wonder how many fucking times I have to say this, but he's talking about multiplayer dipshit, not to mention half of those games you just mentioned, either no one's ever heard
of. So if the main narrative that Actman's going for is the multiplayer side of this genre, then why does he conveniently like to cherry pick whether or not single player matters in this context or not, especially when bringing up games like GoldenEye?
Well, Nier, if you actually paid attention to the video like you claimed to, he's talking about the game that made shooters as a whole more popular on console. You know, it is possible to talk about two different conversations and have both of them be different contexts. I know that may be revolutionary for you, but trust me, it's possible.
Wait, what the fuck? In that case, let's bring up the full context, because Actman wasn't just claiming that GoldenEye was a game that popularized shooters on consoles. Multiple times he was playing it up as if it was a threat to other multiplayer arena shooters. That is until he disclosed that the game itself had no online multiplayer and admitted it wasn't a real threat. So even going by your own standards of there being two different contexts, no, Actman still went against his own narrative, and he did so throughout the entire video with multiple games.
Is this uploader on his period? Okay, I'm pinning that.
Oh, dude, that forced laughter's so fucking cringe. Please don't ever do that again.
Okay.
That was forced? Take it from me personally, Krilix, someone literally dating the guy, I think I know what his laugh sounds like. And I mean, what point was there to this response anyway, other than a petty and snide remark?
But all I have to say in conclusion is if you go look at the video from Actman, and you go look at the likes and dislikes, well, it seems like most people agree with him. And you know, it appears to be that most of the people that are upset about this are just speds screaming into the fucking void.
That's all, folks.
If that's the case, then going by your logic, what the fuck does that say about you? I guess since Nier and myself have a better ratio than you, you're just some fucking sped screeching into the void, huh? Actman's ratio isn't everything, and the countless amount of people that have been voicing themselves in their own videos, streams, or comments, or even on Actman's Twitter, is just astounding. But because Actman got good ratio, therefore he's right, Jesus, you really need to get some perspective, my guy. But honestly, I don't really care if you do or don't at this point. You've proven yourself to be a pretty much irredeemable, disingenuous, and petty fuck by doubling down on so much while being an insufferable snide douchebag. Thankfully, we're at the tail end of this abysmal train wreck, and the rest of his video has absolutely no relevancy, so I'm just gonna cut it off here, guys. I do have to just summarize, though, that this has to have been one of the worst response videos I've ever seen, let alone covered. I mean, this man puts people like Bring Halo back to shame for the amount of times he either misses the point entirely, strawmans people's points, or just cuts them off to make them look bad. And it's that exact kind of behavior that makes you a nigh irredeemable prick in my eyes, in all honesty, Krilix, because as you said at the start of this, in your own words, you have nothing to apologize for. Well, honey, you've got a big storm coming now as a result. But with all of that said, I am going to end the video here, guys. This shit has gone on for way too fucking long, so seriously, I'ma just throw the towel in now, guys. So, big ups for watching it, and especially if you made it this far in, y'all are the real ones, and I really do appreciate the hell out of you guys. And you know, maybe subscribe for some more quality therapy, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.
How does it taste? How does that dick taste, my friend? How does it taste? How does that dick taste, my friend? If you have a 2-inch dick, I got thick 6 cock. I got subscribers that stick. We could be at the fucking club. When I get into the bathtub, I get to see the entire bulbous gut. Bathtub filled up with my fucking Wendy's chili.